Cool. So yeah, we'll get started today. Yeah, so we're gonna do a miso ramen. It's slightly different than some other ramens, and this is very different than if you've just had like a ramen like this, and you just like made a little packet. It's gonna be a little different. It's essentially the same thing, and I'll kind of explain some of that, but we're gonna be essentially like the little pack that's in there, we're gonna be making everything ourselves, so we have this really nice flavor instead of something that's just like crazy salty and MSG. So we're just going to use the noodles out of these. We're not going to use the seasoning pack. Another thing with ramen, it's one of those things where we're going to get everything ready kind of all at once, and then everything will get assembled. So I have a couple different cameras today, so you'll see one that's going to be like preparing, and then I have another one that's on the stove. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is, if you're going to do like a shrimp tempura, like I said, this is the shrimp tempura that I got. You're going to want to preheat your oven to 425 and get these in there in just a few minutes. So the first thing, that's what we're going to do. If you're not doing shrimp tempura and you're not going to have any meat or protein with it, that's okay. Just don't preheat your oven right now. But that's what I'm going to do because these are really good.
Quick question, Kev.
Yeah.
Did you say 400 or 425? The box is 400.
I believe is what the pack says. 400. Yep, it's 400. So, 400. Thanks, Kyle. So yeah, so we'll get that preheated and we'll get those. And these take about 20 minutes or so. I think the pack says 18, but about 20 is great. And then we'll kind of get started on building the steps for ramen. So the first thing that we're going to make is the tare, which is essentially all of the seasoning. If you're doing this at home like you are right now, or if you're want to make this a little quicker, you can kind of combine this step and the broth all together, which we'll do at the end. But the reason that a lot of ramen shops do it like this is because they're going to have the same kind of broth. So they have a pork broth and a chicken broth and a miso broth and a vegetarian or vegetable broth, and then they have all these different tares that they can combine, and then you can have all these different misos kind of out of the same base ingredient. So since we're just going to make one today, I'm going to kind of show you the steps as if you wanted to make 5 different kinds of this, and then 5 different broths, and then you can have all these different combinations, but we're just going to be doing one. But it should be really good. It's one of my favorites. So yeah, we're going to start with that.
The late joiner, can you repeat what to preheat the oven to?
Oh,
sorry.
Sure. If you are making like a shrimp tempura, then you're going to preheat it to 400. If you are not doing shrimp tempura, then don't worry about it.
We are making ours from scratch. So they're already in the oil. We
okay.
Started it.
Sure. I can help you with that as well. This is what I'm doing because it's really easy, but I can help you with making it from scratch too.
Or can I keep it like this?
Yeah, that's fine. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so the first thing we're going to make is the tare, which is like essentially a lot of where the seasoning is. So we're going to switch to this camera. Perfect. So first ingredient is miso. So this is what I got. It's just white miso.
Hey, Kev, what are you doing this in a bowl or on the stove?
This is just in a bowl. We're just mixing this in a bowl with a whisk.
We gotta get a bowl. Hold on.
Sorry. We gotta like open mine and everything. So like I said, I have white miso. If you got red miso, or if you got any other different kind of like miso paste, that's okay. This is just the one that I happen to find, and that looks good. Cindy, you raised your hand. What's up?
So I'm not using miso.
Right.
You told me I have to use soy sauce.
Soy sauce. You're going to add about the same amount of soy sauce, so you'll need about a half. I think it's half a cup. Maybe a little less, but it should be fine.
Sorry, Kevin, would you repeat the miso amount?
Yeah, so we're going to need a half a cup of miso. I'm not going to like grab a measuring cup out. I'm just going to get a couple spoonfuls that's like pretty close. it's not one of those things. We're not baking here. It doesn't have to be precise, but a half a cup. So mine's about 2 big spoonfuls or so.
I'm a little short. Can I just leave it like that?
That's perfectly fine.
Doesn't have much.
Not a big deal. The next ingredient is a 1/4 cup of salt. So again, I'm just gonna like kind of eyeball it. So yeah.
How much salt?
What's that?
Kev, how much salt?
1/4 cup.
I'm supposed to be on a low sodium diet.
Go ahead. Yes, Cindy.
Okay, so because I use soy and it's so salty,
Yep.
I don't know, is miso salty too, or?
Miso is pretty salty. So essentially, this is going to be all of the seasoning for our broths and stuff. So it seems like it's going to be a whole lot of salt and everything, but we're not going to add this entire thing to the bowls. We're going to add like a big spoonful, and then we have a bunch of broth, and then that will kind of make its own kind of sauce almost. So it seems like it's going to be a really whole lot of salt, but it'll turn out pretty well, I promise.
Okay, a half a teaspoon.
Cool.
So we do not add a half cup of the salt to the bowl, correct?
I did a 1/4 cup. So mine is half a cup of miso and then a 1/4 cup of salt.
But you add the whole 1/4 cup to the bowl.
Yep. Yep. Like I said, I just kind of eyeballed mine. Mine was slight. I could get it, but I'm pretty sure it's about a 1/4 cup. Lindsay and Missy, you guys are muted. We're muting people, so it's not like overriding and doing all this.
Okay, well, I have a stupid question.
Sure.
Were the soy sauce instructions is an alternative to the miso?
Yes, Cindy doesn't like miso flavor, so she.
Pour that soy sauce out of the bowl.
Sorry, she decided. She asked me. She's like, I don't really like miso, and I can't find it. Can I do soy sauce? And I said, sure. So it should just be right now. The bowl should just have miso and salt.
Perfect. I'm gonna put this in. Thank you.
Yep. The next is a 1/4 cup of water. I will grab my little measuring cup for that because I gotta get it in for something. Quarter cup of water. The next is about 3½ teaspoons of tahini. So this is the tahini that I have. If you have a squeeze one, that's fine. You'll want about 3½ teaspoons or about a tablespoon worth. So if you have tahini, it kind of separates because it's essentially just ground sesame seeds in the oil. So when you have it, if it looks like that or if it looks watery, you just kind of get a little of both.
Kevin, could you use peanut butter instead of tahini if you didn't have tahini?
You could probably use peanut butter. It wouldn't turn out exactly the same, but it'd be fairly close. It'll be a little, of course, more peanutty and less sesame, which I think would actually probably taste pretty good, but it would be a little different than like a typical flavor. Next is a tablespoon of rice vinegar. So this is just seasoned rice vinegar. If you didn't get seasoned, that's perfectly okay. This is just what I have because when I like make sushi bowls or something, I really like the flavor of this one. So you'll need about a tablespoon of that as well.
Kevin, how much peanut butter if you didn't have the tahini?
About the same, like a tablespoon-ish.
Thank you.
If you have sesame oil. That's what we're gonna do next. I made some of my own because I forgot it. To make it yourself, you just put about a 1/4 cup of sesame seeds, toasted, into a pan with a cup of oil. So it's like a kind of a dark brownish. And then you'll let it go for about 2 or 3 minutes till your oil gets hot. Put it in a blender, blend it up. Make sure you're careful if you're blending something that's hot. Then you're gonna wanna strain it, and that's it. That's sesame oil. If you bought it, that's great. That's what I would have done, but I thought I had some. I did not. So I'm just gonna add a couple of squirts here. You're gonna want about 2 tablespoons-ish. If you didn't have tahini and you're using peanut butter instead, you might want to use a little extra. But if not, then that's perfectly fine. For the people that are new or that joined, I saw a couple people join in here. Right now, we're just working on the tare for this. So if you see the ingredients, the ingredient list, right now, we're pretty much all the way through there. So just add everything to a bowl with a whisk, and that's where we're at right now. So this has miso paste, it has salt, it has water, tahini, sesame oil, and rice vinegar so far. Next is pepper. If you have white pepper, it's great. It makes it look a little nicer. I don't, and I didn't feel like buying it, so I just have black pepper from Costco, and I'm just grinding it. Yeah. For the people that just joined as well, you're going to be muted by default. If you have questions, you can unmute yourself and ask. Or there's a little feature that's like raised hand or something, and we'll unmute you too, whatever you feel like doing. Just makes it a little easier so we don't hear a ton of background noise. So for pepper, I'm just gonna add a couple little grinds of it there. If you like stuff really peppery, add some more. If you don't, then don't add as much. But we're gonna want about 1/2 teaspoon, so it's not a ton of pepper. It's not going to be our dominant flavor. So we're just going to mix this all up until it's like a paste. The miso is already a paste, but we're going to just make sure this is all mixed up.
Kevin, is that what you were taught in chef school, to whisk one direction and then the other?
A little bit. I'm just like seeing like there was some lumps of the miso. So as I was going, I was just like, oh, I just want to kind of go the opposite direction. It also is easier on the wrist. So if I'm not going this, my wrist gets a little tired. So I'm going to shift it around so don't get as fatigued. So that's about the consistency we're looking for. This is just like a little spatula. So kind of thick, paste-like. And that's all we need to do for that. We're just going to set this aside until we need it a little bit later.
Kev, mine's a little on the thin side.
Okay, that's fine. Not a big deal.
Okay.
If your miso is a little not as thick, then that's okay.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was thin. It was squirt bottle.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure it will still taste fine.
Okay.
Oh, all right. So the next thing we're going to do is get our broth going. So for me, I'm going to kind of do 2 different ones just because I had some of this veggie broth in the fridge and I want to use it up. Aaron doesn't really eat meat, so I'm kind of particular about stuff, but and I also got this one that's like a vegetarian chicken broth. It tastes kind of like a chicken broth and a veggie broth combined, but it's vegetarian and Aaron likes it. So I'm going to use these 2 together. If you didn't get that I said get whatever you want. If you were going to be really traditional, this is where you would make your own broth, but that can take 10, 12, 14 hours to do. And I don't think anybody wants to be on a video call for that long. So if you have questions about if you're like, I really want to make my own broth, great. Send me an email and I can send you some recipes that are like kind of ramen specific ones. Pork is a really good one if you want to do like a tonkatsu, which is a kind of traditional one. That's a pork broth. But really it's whatever flavors you like. So whatever kind of broth you got, this is when we're going to put it on the stove. Yeah. See, I got multiple cameras today. I got 3 cameras. So this is a view of the stove. So I'm going to put this. This is the veggie broth that I had left over that I wanted to get out of the fridge before it went bad.
Is that the 4 cups, Kev?
It will be, yeah. So we're going to want about 4 cups. If you're making an individual portion, you don't have to do as much right now. If you're going to do 2, you're going to want about 2 cups per person. So if you're doing multiple people or you're trying to double it, then again, you're going to want about 2 cups per person, roughly. Some people don't like broth as much. Some people really like it. Just whatever your preference is. Once you kind of make this once and you're like, oh, that's not too bad. I know how to do this. You can kind of play with it. It's all based on your tastes. What we're making today, I think, tastes good. Hopefully, you guys will agree. But you're like, hey, I want this to be. Add some gochujang, which is a spicy Korean paste, or sriracha, whatever you want. If you can kind of play with whatever flavor. So we're going to put this on about medium-high. We're going to want this to essentially simmer, not quite boil, but kind of a simmer. And I'll give people a minute to get that all going. Once we're all at that step, then I will move on, but I'll give people a minute to get that going. Any questions at the moment? That'd be a good time. Also, we're going to add, I forgot about this, add a little bit of garlic and ginger to it. So
How much is it?
about a tablespoon. So this is what I have chopped already. If you're using fresh, feel free to grate it and all that. If you have dried, you'll want about the same amount of a powder. So
Uh-oh, I lost you.
you clicked the wrong button.
Sorry. Technical difficulties from the camera person.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm just gonna add like a little squirt in there. A little bit more. Tablespoon.
You said a tablespoon?
Yep.
Okay.
And the garlic. I like garlic, so I'll add a tiny bit. So yeah, about a tablespoon. Then I'm just gonna give that a quick whisk so it all gets mixed up in there. So you can see here we're essentially building all these individual pieces, and then at the end everything will come together kind of quickly to become our bowl of ramen.
That smells good. I love ginger.
Yeah, if you like ginger, add more. Like, it's all on your taste. Like, if you're a person that really hates it, don't add it. It's not the end of the world.
Is the miso mix supposed to be on the stove?
Nope, it's just gonna be sitting, mine's just in a bowl off to the side. We're gonna.
That's sitting, and then the broth is heating, and
Yep.
then in a separate pan. What's in the separate pan? You have 2 pans on the stove?
Yep, nothing's in there yet.
Okay.
We're gonna be adding some of our toppings. So I'm gonna be doing corn and vegetables in mine. So that's gonna go in another pan, and the pan that I have on the stove now, we're gonna take the tare here, the miso paste mix that we made, and then with our broth, we're gonna kind of mix them all together. I think I can probably do it in just this bowl. If you have like a wok and you were trying to be really fancy, you would like do it in the wok first and then add some broth and do all that, but I think it'll work just fine in that pot. All right, I think everybody's kind of looking at me, so I think we're all roughly in the same place. So the next thing that I'm gonna do here is, if you're doing the shrimp tempura, I'm gonna pop mine in the oven. For Lindsay and Missy, who are being brave adventurers and making shrimp tempura on their own. That's fantastic. Have you made shrimp tempura before?
We've made excellent shrimp tempura before, and we did not do the tempura mix. So this is more of like a flour breaded fried shrimp that we just made. So it's very unexciting and just sitting over there cooling right now.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
If you haven't tried this brand from the freezer section,
Yeah.
it is very delicious.
I'm not sponsored by CPAC, I promise. It's just, I think that it makes a really good shrimp tempura for the oven. Of course, if you're like trying to impress people and make something really fancy, make shrimp tempura from scratch. But I think this worked really, really well for how easy it is. It tastes really good. Yeah, just on a little sill pad. It's gonna go in the oven. So putting mine in the oven. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is get water boiling for our noodles. So I have just the pot here. Just going to fill it up about half, 3/4-ish, depending on if you're making an individual portion or more. You'll just want a big pot of water to boil.
Now you're getting into the territory that I'm qualified to cook, boiling a pot of water.
Boiling water. If you're going to be making if you're going to make soft-boiled eggs, like I'm going to do as well as one of the toppings, I can go into that, but you're going to want like a small little pot of water. I don't have water in this yet, but a small little pot to do that as well, and we'll get that going. So all the burger recipes.
Can I use a hard-boiled egg? I don't like soft-boiled eggs.
Sure, but again, this is whatever your taste preferences are.
Okay. I already made mine, so I'm good.
All right, so I have this one back here with water that's going to be for my eggs. I have this one back here, which is my broth, garlic, and ginger mixture. This is just water that's going to be for the noodles. And this is what we're going to cook. So I'm doing some corn, peas, and carrots are going to be some of my toppings. So I'm going to cook them in here. Just some of my toppings. So again, if you have canned stuff, that's great. If you have fresh stuff, that's great too. I'm just using frozen stuff from King Soopers or Kroger's. Just frozen corn, frozen peas and carrots. Again, it's not fancy. So I'm just going to turn my stove on about medium heat and let that heat up. The reason that we're not going to be like throwing everything in right now while it's still cold is it won't really cook as evenly. It'll kind of just be sitting here, especially since it's frozen. It'll start kind of melting the water, and then you kind of have mushy frozen vegetables in your pan. So you'll kind of want your pan to heat up a little bit first. It's not bad. And I'll just add a little bit of oil to it in just a minute when it's a little more warm. For the most part, I don't use a lot of timers unless I'm doing baking things. The only exception is for hard soft boiled eggs. I'm very particular about this, and it makes like 30 seconds can make a very big difference. So I'm setting my timer for 8 minutes and 30 seconds. And I don't have my eggs in yet. I'm just getting my timer ready. So it just has 8 minutes and 30 seconds. And that's how long we're going to do our eggs. So,
Kevin, if we have some bean sprouts, would this be in the category of things you don't heat up and you add right at the end, or do we heat those?
Yep, those will come at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. A lot of toppings will come like right at the end. So like Lindsay just mentioned, bean sprouts. I found some seeds of bean sprouts, so I've been growing some over the last week. They got too heavy for themselves, so I'm going to add some of these bean sprouts. If you have bok choy, if you have something that needs cut up, feel free to do that now. The one thing I didn't get is some green onions from our garden. And so Aaron's going to go get them for me. So yeah, if you have toppings that you want to put in there, most things don't really need to kind of cook beforehand. If you have fresh stuff like bean sprouts, sesame seeds, the eggs will get kind of put on there. So a lot of stuff you can kind of get ready beforehand, and then everything will assemble pretty quickly. Cindy, raise her
Okay, I'm using fresh mushrooms. Okay. Like
using,
cloudy, whatever. What are your?
Yep.
I'm using fresh mushrooms.
Sure.
Do I pre-cook those?
Yeah, you can pre-cook them. I would do them pretty much the same as like I'm doing my carrots and peas and corn mixture. Cindy.
Bok choy, how much green onion?
Yep. Bok choy, green onion, like just slice them. Those will go on right at the end. You don't need to pre-cook them.
How much should I be chopping up?
However much you want.
Cabbage.
Sorry, what was that?
What about cabbage?
Cabbage is in the same boat as bok choy. You're not going to really want to cook that beforehand. It will kind of go on the top, and the broth and everything will kind of cook it a little bit. So it'll still have a little bit of crunch, but it won't be like a soggy kind of thing. So
Okay, so I'm not that familiar with bok choy. So
Yes.
pretty much shred it, and how much of the stem?
About right where your finger is where I would go. Like, no, where you're holding it. So like where you're holding it and up. I don't use it. You can use a lot of the white. I tend to not, just because it gets very kind of more crunchy than I like. But I would just kind of chop that like you would like a shredded lettuce almost. All right. So I'm going to switch this over here. Cool. So we can see our water is almost boiling there for our eggs. What I'm also going to do is I'm just going to get a plain bowl, and I'm going to fill it up with ice water. So when the eggs hit their 8.5-minute mark, I'm going to take them out and put them in ice water so they don't keep cooking. So if you're going to do eggs, get a bowl with ice and water, and that'll be what we're going to get that out of. Cool. So you can see here, it's just a bowl with some ice and water, and it doesn't have to be overflowing or anything like that. It's just enough. So my water is boiling. As you can see back here, you can see a lot of steam coming off. So I'm going to put my eggs in there. I'm just going to lower them down so they don't crack. So I'm just putting them in like that. And I'm setting my timer, 8 minutes, 30 seconds. If you're a minute or so behind me, that's okay too, not a big deal. When your 8.5 minutes is up, and I got this, my brother gave me a really great ramen book. And there's a really great picture that I want to show you about eggs, of all things. Yeah, I'll make this a little better, but this is essentially the difference between minutes of eggs. So at the top here is 8 minutes, and down here is 10 minutes. So this is about the softness it will be at 8 minutes. This is roughly where we're going to be at for our 8.5-minute mark. So the whites are going to be fully cooked, but the yolk is still going to be a little runny in there. The longer that you cook it, the harder that the inside of the egg's going to be. The yolk will be. So if you're like my mom and you don't like soft boiled, do it about 12 minutes and you'll have a really nice hard boiled egg. Lindsay, I know you cook hard boiled eggs on like a daily basis, so you're probably pretty pro at this, but just as I really thought this was a great picture of just showing the difference in time between 8 and 10 minutes of, like you can really see a 30-second difference can make your eggs really different. So.
I never thought that I liked soft-boiled eggs before, but in ramen, I love them because when you crack it open and the yolk runs into the broth, it just makes this delicious combination. So even if you don't love soft-boiled eggs in other applications, I think personally it tastes better in ramen than it might in other scenarios. It's a little less yucky. I get that ick factor from a runny yolk, but because it's a soup, you don't really get the same.
Yeah, it kind of mixes texture in and gets a really smooth texture. But again, if you don't like it, I'm not going to force you to make a soft-boiled egg. Cool. So our pan is heated up. So I'm just going to add a little bit of oil here. Cool. Thanks, Aaron. So I'm just adding a little bit of oil in my pan. Swiggling it around. And this is really up to you at this step. However much you like, if you like a lot of veggies, go for it. Add a lot more. If you are like, yeah, I could do without it, I'd rather have more something else. It's really your preferences here. I like a lot of corn, so I tend to go with like maybe almost half and half, but I like corn a lot, so I tend to do slightly more. Just gonna give that a little toss. And I'll start cooking.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes.
The only reason why you're using the pan is for the vegetables, right?
Sorry, what was that?
The only reason why you're using that pan is vegetables?
Yep. Yep, this is cooking the veggies. You can kind of season your veggie mix however you like. Salt, you can't really go wrong with like salt and pepper. If you have soy sauce, you could add a little soy sauce instead of your salt. That's always good. If you have hoisin sauce, I think that tastes really good as well. Add a little of that. It's really whatever flavors you like. Again, if you like spicy stuff, go for sriracha. If you just want it kind of simple, salt and pepper is really great. So I'm going to do a little bit of soy sauce and pepper on mine. Switch me.
So the frying pan, you put your ramen in there.
Right here?
Yeah.
No, this just has peas and corn and carrots.
Okay.
Ramen is going in this one.
Yep.
It's boiling water. But not yet.
Not yet. Ramen is very finicky. It may seem very unassuming. Here, I'll switch it back to here for me. Like it may seem very unassuming just having like a little 25-cent pack of ramen, but ramen can be very complex. When we're gonna cook ours, we're gonna do it about 30 seconds less than what we would normally do if we were just making this on its own. We want it very al dente because when we put our broth in, when we put our noodles in the broth, it's gonna keep cooking. So we don't wanna have like soggy noodles. Like most pastas, it absorbs a lot of flavor from the broth that it's in, or the sauce. So we're gonna make sure that our, like this packet I think is like 2 minutes. to 3 minutes. So we're gonna do it about 2.5 minutes of cooking this. And then we're gonna get it right into the bowl at the end. So it's one of these things that it's gonna happen very quickly once we kind of get everything where it's at. So I have about 2.5 to 50 on my egg. I try not to like overwhelm myself and get everything on at once and then play a game of time. So since I know I only have a couple minutes left on my eggs, I'm gonna wait till they're done before I do the next step. So I'm not like trying to keep the clock. The eggs can sit in the ice water until we're ready. So we're not like in a huge rush for that once those are out. So just make sure these are going. I'm gonna add my soy sauce when it's a little more heated. I thought it was hotter than it was, but it was not. I accidentally had it on the little burner. So didn't get as hot as I wanted to. Okay. If you have other toppings, go ahead.
Do you put salt in the water for the ramen noodles?
No, we're not going to salt the water because, as you probably saw earlier, there's miso and salt and soy and all of that. So we're not going to need to season the water.
What are your thoughts, since I couldn't find the tahini that I bought yesterday at the store, and I used peanut butter, about chopped nuts at the end?
If you like that, go right ahead. So I'm just going to take, we have some chives from our garden here that Erin has washed for me very graciously. So I'm just going to cut these into just like little bits. This is just going to be stuff on the top. And again, this is however much you'd like of it. This is like a fancy cutting board with different
The first time it's ever been used.
Yeah, I don't use it very often. Just an FYI, if you're using like a wooden or a bamboo cutting board, I would strongly advise against doing like chicken on it. Chicken, as you probably know, has a higher risk of using or having salmonella, and you can't clean a wooden cutting board as easily as a plastic or a glass one. You can't sanitize it in the dishwasher. So I would not use a wooden cutting board for like chicken or meat or anything, just because it's a little harder to clean.
Unless you buy one from Sur La Table, and then you can
Those
put them in the
are
dishwasher.
composite ones. They're not the straight wood. Like some of the wood ones are really nice and they have like a really good coating on them and stuff like that, and you can definitely use them. But for most things like this one, so I'm going to stop where I'm at right now because my timer is done. So I'm going to take my eggs out of the water. Switch here. So I just have this little, like a slotted spoon would work. So I'm just taking them out and putting them in the ice water. And those can just set to the side here. And I can take the water off the stove to get a little more room.
Kevin,
I do this separately from my noodles is because if you accidentally drop an egg in too quick, then you have egg all into your water and then you have to start all over. I've done that many times, so I try to keep them separate so I don't mess up one from the other. So these are away. Questions?
Kevin, what kind of knife is that? It's got a beautiful.
Yeah. Switch it back here. It's just a shun knife. It's like the cheapest versions of shun that you can get. They have plastic handles, but I got them on purpose so I can put them in the dishwasher. Most people will be like, no, you should never put that kind of knife in a dishwasher. It's fine. It wasn't like a $500 knife. It's fine. It was from Costco. But they're shuns. They're pretty nice and they're sharp. I should get them sharpened, but they work for me. Yeah. So I'm just gonna finish up some of my little chive, green onions. They are different I know they're different. If you have green onions, do that. If you have chives, like I have in the garden, I didn't want to buy new ones. I'm just cutting what I think would be good for 2 people's worth. If you're cooking a single serving tonight, but you know you're gonna like make ramen tomorrow for lunch because you have extra broth and tare and stuff, feel free to cut some now. Put them in a plastic baggie, and then you have some topping, and you don't have to like dirty your knife and cutting board and all that again tomorrow. So I'll do just a little bit more because I think it has a good flavor to it.
Kevin, does the tahini need to be refrigerated after opening?
I believe so, but check your packaging. I'm pretty sure it does. I refrigerate mine after. So just check your packaging and see.
I can't, it's not on there.
Then I would refrigerate it just to be safe. Yeah. So we're back over here at the stove. This is cooking away. I'm gonna add a little bit of soy sauce to mine instead of salt because I think it adds a really good flavor to it. It'll kind of heat kind of quickly because there's still oil. You'll see it kind of bubble up.
Is it regular soy sauce or low sodium?
You can use whatever. I usually will buy low sodium just because it's so salty. But if you have regular, that's fine. If I just buy this just because I think it tastes just the same and have a little bit less sodium because it's a salty dish. So I'm just going to turn those to low. I'm going to switch these two for me just so this is easier so that you guys can see it. Be careful if you're going to be moving pots of boiling things. I'm just going to switch these two for now. So we're going to want our broth mixture on like, it kind of got really hot because I have an electric stove and it was on boil. So I'm just going to like raise it off the heat for a minute so it doesn't kind of overcook. You can't, if it starts to boil, that's okay. It's not that big of a deal. But we want this going to be kind of like on a simmer. Just checking my shrimps. They're looking pretty good. Just trying to make sure I got everything. Yeah. These guys. So I'm just going to take my ramen out of the package because we're going to get that in pretty soon. So yeah, I'm just literally taking this. We're not using the seasoning packet. You can throw this away. It's just salt and MSG. MSG isn't like this big evil thing that a lot of people think it is. It can be pretty useful in certain situations, but this is just like a salt bomb. I'm just getting these ready, so they're just kind of sitting here. I'm also going to, if you have like bean sprouts or other things, like right now is when you can get them kind of cut up or out of the package or whatever you want to be kind of how they are. So I just have, like I said, I had some bean sprouts like growing, so I'm just gonna cut them and they're ready to go. All right, so switch me over.
Next time I'm gonna need a mouse pad.
Okay.
I can't.
So we're over here again. So I'm just like making sure these don't burn. If you add soy sauce like I do, you can kind of see it gets, a lot of the moisture will evaporate. So just make sure you're stirring these because it will kind of stick to the bottom of your pan pretty often if you don't. So you can see some really good coloration on there. I think that is very good. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to peel our eggs. If you aren't doing eggs, then you can kind of skip past this or just check on your other things. And then after that, we're going to be almost ready to go. So I'm going to get my eggs. Here. What's that?
Oh, did someone forget to leave you?
So I'm gonna peel my soft-boiled eggs. So be careful when you're doing this because they are soft-boiled. If you're having hard-boiled eggs, then you can be a little more rough with it. But I'll show you how I peel them. I just kind of crack the bottom of it. So if your egg is like this shape, the kind of the rounder side, not the pointier side, is there's an air pocket right there. So that's where, I'm trying to make sure I'm under the thing. So here's an uncracked egg. So you can see the pointier side is right here. The kind of rounder side is there. There's an air pocket right here. And pretty much every egg that you're ever gonna have, there's gonna be an air pocket. That's just an anatomy of the egg. So I always kind of start there, and then I just do a gentle crack like all the way around it, because we don't wanna like have to re-crack it later. So I have a cutting board here just so I can like put my eggshells on something. So I just peel a little bit off at a time. So if you see, you can see this little like ridge on the egg. I don't know if the light's too intense, but there's like a little ridge right there. That's where the air pocket was. So, so we're just gonna start peeling it. You can also, what I like to do is, so like you can see there's like a tiny little piece of shell right there. I just dip it in water, the same water that I had before, and that gets some of these tiny little pieces. If you have like brown shelled eggs, it makes it a little easier so you can kind of see exactly what you have. And it kind of usually will peel off. So I just kind of dip it in the water, get it all nice and cleaned off, and then you have an egg. So I'll do that one more time. So this is the kind of rounder side, not the pointier side. So I always start just a little crack. So just enough to kind of break it. And then I just do a soft little crack all the way around it. Not enough to like break the whole egg in half. So just little taps. Just tap it in. Then again, I'm gonna have my water here just because I think it makes it a little cleaner. And then just like slowly work the way around it. So again, what we're doing is we're making all of our little steps pretty much complete. And then at the end, everything will assemble all at once. So these are all these little prep things that you can do beforehand. So if you're like, I don't want to do this the day of, and you want to do it the day before, go for it. You can like do this a day or two before and you have your eggs ready. If you want to chop your veggies and you're like hosting people and you have everything all set up, you can do that hours beforehand. Just have it in the fridge. If it needs to be refrigerated, and be ready to go when time comes. All right, is everybody at the same step? Are we all feeling okay? Some thumbs up? Excellent, excellent. So, you switch me back to the stove.
Talking to your brother, Kev, I'm talking to your brother.
Okay. Well, he's not here right now, so he said he was going to watch this later. So, so now we're going to we're going to combine our broth mixture here and our tare that we made beforehand, our miso paste mixture. This is what I was saying earlier. Sometimes you can just make this all in once if you know you're going to be doing the same thing. But say I had Cindy over and she didn't like miso. I could have a soy version of this and then a miso version of this, and then I can combine in the bowl. I can have these a little separate, so I can add this to this in the pot, or if you're going to do it in the bowl, you can do that with different ones if you're kind of making a variety of different things. So we're going to take our whisk, and we have this, and we're going to essentially pour it in there. So I just grabbed a little spatula to do that. And then we're just gonna whisk this like crazy. We're gonna do our best to emulsify it. If you have a stick blender, feel free to use it, but it's a lot of dishes extra for nothing, and I've used a whisk already. So we're just gonna whisk this in really, really well. We're gonna do our best to emulsify the fats from like the sesame oil and the miso into our broth. Essentially the fat and the broth and all that kind of mixture, when it gets all emulsified together, it kind of grips to the noodles and you get this really, really great taste and great flavor and texture and everything for your. Right. I'm just going to turn my oven off because I know my shrimp are done. And pretty much they're about, I would say, a minute or two, and I'm just going to turn that off and just get that stirring. That's looking pretty good to me. Oh, wait, how's everybody doing? They get that combined pretty well? Any questions?
Yep.
People feeling good? All right.
As good as you look.
So, next thing we're going to do is take our ramen and put it in our boiling water. So I'm just going to keep this kind of like making sure it's stirred as I cook everything else. So again, our ramen is going to cook about 2.5 minutes or so. So it's 6:28 on my clock, so I'll take them out just after 6:30. If you have like a double one where you have the second kind of strainer pot, feel free to use that if you want. Again, that's, I think, sometimes just extra dishes for no reason. Tongs work really well just to pull them out at the end. While those are cooking, this is where we're going to kind of get everything set up for our bowls. So, if you want to switch me back over here. So I have these large bowls. I'll just do one so you can see how that goes. I'm gonna like cut my egg in half right now just so you can see what that looks like. Mine got a little more done than normal, so I think it was that, but normally it'd be a lot softer. So it's slightly soft. So I think just me talking and all of that made it a little longer, but you can see this is the difference between like an 8.5 and a 9 minute or so. But I think it'll still taste really good. If you were like, I don't want that, I want to try again, feel free to do so. Not a big deal.
Kevin, have you ever done this with a poached egg? And if so, do you have a preference for hard-boiled for any reason? Or is it just that it takes less supervision?
The soft-boiled egg usually takes less supervision. I do a poached egg fairly commonly with it. It's a little more complicated. People get really afraid of poaching eggs, so I went to the more easy route. But yeah, poached egg is really delicious on this too. Yeah, mine got a little more done than I would have wanted, but I think it will still turn out really well. All right, so we're gonna start assembling our bowls. So this is just my broth and miso mixture. Again, I'm just going to give it a quick little stir before I start plating, or bowling, I guess. I don't know what the term would be for plating a bowl. Just going to take my ladle and put it in there. Mine is going to have about 3 to 4 ladles full. Again, it depends on what kind of bowl size you have. So I'm just going to put this one here so I can do it all at once. I got these really huge bowls specifically for ramen at IKEA. They seem massive, and they are, don't get me wrong, but it makes a really good ramen bowl because you want to mix things up and then you don't have to worry about the kind of bowl overflowing or anything like that. So I have it right there. If you want a little more, put a little more. If you want a little less, do a little less. Not the end of the world. So I'm gonna switch back over real quick because I asked Aaron to do something for me. So you can see the ramen here. So mine's starting to break apart here. It's getting really soft, which is good. Mine says 632, so it's probably a little past, but my water wasn't at a complete boiling boil. So I'm gonna take that off. I'm just getting a pot holder to put my water down over here. I'm gonna switch them back up. Awesome. Yeah, I got that. That's fine. Cool. So I'm just taking the noodles out of my pot here and putting them in there. You're gonna want some ramen, like what you want to do first is like you're gonna kind of mix this all in so all of your noodles get some of that really delicious broth. And you're gonna kind of lift them up and like set them like a raft almost on top as best as you can, because then you're gonna want your toppings to kind of sit on that. So that was one. And you don't have to worry about like this getting like cold as you're doing multiple ones. Like this was almost boiling, so it's going to be really hot. So it's one of those nice things where you don't have to worry about things getting cold as you're plating. I'm just placing them in here. This one needs a little more. Yeah, so again, I'm just gonna get a good little stir so all of that really yumminess is all over every noodle, and I'm gonna kind of lift it up as best as you can and then like lay it down. So you get this kind of, see the difference between the two? This is like when you like nicely plated it where it's just like, you can just see a little bit poking out, and this is what it looks like if you just like stirred it all together. So they taste equally as good, but for presentation wise, we're just gonna kind of lift it up and then like set it down, and it makes it look a little nicer in our bowls. And we're going to, I'm taking, getting a little bit of a full plate. So I'm gonna move this back over here. Then I'm gonna take some of my veggies here. If you wanted to be really fancy with it, you can get like a spoon and kind of top them, but again, I'm just gonna kind of plate some over towards the side, but again, like half-ish. There's one. This one over. And I'm like just trying to like go back and forth and like, oh, this one needs a little more, this one needs a little more, just back and forth like that. Cool, that's all that. Right, so we have our bowls here. I'll just keep with this one. I'm gonna take some of my sprouts here. I probably should do a little more. So I'm just gonna set those there. When you mix it all in, they'll get in there and they'll get really soft. So if you have like the traditional looking bean sprouts that you find that are kind of white, again, put as much as you think tastes good. If you just want a little bit, add just a little bit. If you want a lot, add a lot. So I'm just gonna add those there. All right, so now I'm gonna put my, go back here, gonna put my eggs in. Try to do them like that, make it look a little nicer. Feel free to make your bowls look however you'd like. This is just how I like doing it. I try to get the eggs in the middle because I think it looks nice. It gets a nice little flow. I'm gonna take my shrimp out of the oven because I definitely know they are done. So this is what they look like. They just get really nice and crispy. So I'm just gonna set them aside here. You can do your shrimp in 2 different ways. Some people will put the shrimp right into the bowl. I think it can look really nice. You also flavor your shrimp with your broth, which is good, but it can make them sometimes soggy. So what I'll do is since the pack comes with 8 shrimp, I'll do 2 in the bowl and 2 on the side. So you always have some crunchy shrimp to eat with it. So I'm just gonna set those there. Then for this one, these are right here. Like that. I really like pickled ginger. It's not a super traditional ingredient. This is just like from the store sushi ginger. I really like it because I like the kind of vinegariness. I think it can look pretty too. So I'm just taking a bit of that because I like it. This one's gonna be mine. Erin doesn't like it as much, so I'm just gonna do like a couple pieces on hers because she isn't as big of a fan of pickled ginger. Then next I'm gonna take some of my green onions or chives here. Just do like one little area of it just to keep it all nice. That. And then last thing, just gonna use some sesame seeds. Just sprinkle on that. And that is miso ramen. It's gonna switch me back over. Yeah. How are people feeling about that? I know it was a lot of things all at once. It's like the switching line where all the things kind of come together.
Ours looks great. Here, I'm gonna show you.
Yeah, that looks awesome. Before you like dig into them, will you guys take pictures of them and like send them to me on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram?
I think everybody needed to see how giant these bowls are.
Yeah, we have really big bowls. They're
What's your Instagram, Kevin?
It is just Meals with Monk.
Oh, you did set one up. Good.
So feel free to tag me in that. I'm just trying to get more pictures of stuff. So that's what it is. How are people feeling about it?
Beautiful.
Good.
Let's see, can I get it? Oh, the camera's on this side.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like if you made like a roast chicken a couple days ago, put some roast chicken in there. Like we did like a big rotisserie and you have some left over, that works great. There's some very traditional things like a chasu, which is like a big pork roll. If you have bacon, put bacon on there. Whatever flavors you like, go for it. Like,
Oh, Kyle's looks great.
Yeah, that looks really good, Kyle.
Kyle, it looks so good. I want you to come cook for me.
That's what I'm in for.
So yeah, that's everything. Do people have questions before I let you go eat your delicious ramen?
We're ready to eat. Thank you,
What
Kevin.
What else can we pair with it?
So before we go, if you haven't already, feel free to follow me on any of the social medias that I mentioned. I have a Venmo if you'd like to donate to help me keep doing these. It's just Kevin_Monk. And that's everything. I like my little Star Wars Days is coming up, and I'm really excited to have my lightsaber chopsticks. That's it.
May 4th is Monday.
I know, I'm so excited.
Best Star Wars movie of all time comes released.
The next one of these that I'm going to be doing is going to be next Tuesday. Actually, I'll do a Cinco de Mayo one. I haven't decided exactly on the main dish, but I'll make guacamole. People really like my guac, so you can do guac. Going to make margaritas and some kind of taco enchiladas, quesadilla, chimichanga, something like that. I haven't decided yet. So it'll be a little shorter. Instead of like a week, it'll be Tuesday because that's Cinco de Mayo. But I'll send everything out tonight. So if you want to join, it'll be the same kind of thing is today.
How about chicken with mole sauce?
Okay, Dad, he's not taking suggestions.
I'm always happy to.
Oh,
We're hungry. We're gonna go eat.
I'll
Love
think
you
about that.
Only take like 2 days to make.
bye.
Thanks a lot.
Everyone, hope you
Love you
hope you
guys.
enjoyed.
Bye.
Bye.